Following my talks on US government and civics and on the US Constitution, I felt that I wanted to give you some more questions to go through because it's such an important part of the exam, and also because some of it is really complicated, and perhaps by going through some questions it can help explain areas that I know many of you find difficult. One area that a lot of people find difficult is how the presidential election works in the United States. That you can get into this strange situation where the majority of people could vote for one candidate, but the other candidate wins, and why. And explaining how this happens, I thought what we might do is do a question and hope that in answering the question you get a better understanding of it. I suspect this question, which we've got here on the 2016 presidential election, you would struggle to get right without my help. But I hope that after going through this question, you're going to understand this system of the presidential election better. When there is a presidential election, the people vote, but after the people vote, the election is decided by the electoral college system. And so that's what this question is about. So I'm just going to read what we've got here. The electoral college system consists of 538 electors. A majority, or 270 of the electoral votes, 270 is more than half of 538. So 269 times 2 is 538. So if you want a majority, you would need to get 270. So a majority, or 270 electoral votes, is required to elect the president. Each state is allotted one elector for each of its members in the House of Representatives, which is based on the state's population, plus 2 additional electors to count for the state's 2 senators. So the electoral college of a state will depend on the size of that state. So if you are California, you are a big state you are a state with a large population. As a result, you will have more members of the House of Representatives than if you are a small state like Vermont. So you'll have more House of Representatives coming from California. So the electoral college for California will have more people than Vermont. But Vermont has 2 senators and Senate has 2 senators. So the additional 2 electors, everyone will get the additional 2. When a state votes, if California votes, if the majority of people in California, even if that majority is only one person out of the millions of people in California, the electoral college system works such that every single one of the electoral college members representing California will vote for the majority that California chose. It may sound very unfair that you could have in Texas, you could have a huge majority for the Republicans. And therefore in Texas, the electoral college members for Texas, every single one of them will vote Republican. But in California, even if the majority for Democrats is only one person, still every single member of the electoral college representing California will vote for say it's the Democratic Party that had a one-person majority, that every single one of the members of the electoral college system representing California will vote Democrat. That's how it works. So the following figure shows the results of the 2016 presidential election. Senators are elected to 6-year terms and members of the House are elected to 2-year terms. Let's have a look at the next slide. We're going to see this map of America, and the dark colours are Trump and the lighter colours are Clinton. Trump was standing for the Republicans and Clinton was standing for the Democrats. And if you look at the top of this, I hope it's clear for you in the video, but Clinton got 232 electoral votes and Trump got 306 electoral votes. Therefore, the 2016 presidential election was won by Trump, because you need 270 to win, and Trump got over 270, he got 306. But if you look underneath, and I hope you can see this, Hillary Clinton received 62,521,739 votes, which was 48.03% of all the votes. And Trump received 61,195,258 votes, which was 47.01% of all the votes. So despite the fact that Hillary Clinton got more than 1 million more votes than Trump, she lost. And you can then see in the dark colours for Trump and the light colours for Clinton, which states voted Democrat for Clinton and which states voted Republican for Trump. Remember, these states all have different size populations. So some of them will carry a lot of electoral college and have a lot of electoral college members in them. Some of them will not have very many. And you can see on the West Coast, you can see a lot of the lighter Democrat colour, and you can see up in the Northeast that there's quite a lot of the light Democratic colour. But in a lot of the rest of the country, these states may look very big, but actually they don't necessarily have a lot of people in them. You can see that Donald Trump did well. Now let's go to the questions. So we'll come back to the chart. Which candidate did most Americans vote for? Donald Trump, A, Hillary Clinton, B, Jill Stein, C, or Gary Johnson, D? Well, we didn't see any sign of Jill Stein or Gary Johnson, so we know it's either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. And the answer was, we talked about it already, Clinton got the most votes with 62,521,739, which is more than Trump of 61,195,258. So this is really highlighting this strange situation that can happen in US presidential elections, where it's unusual, but in this case, the person with the fewer votes of the two won. So the answer was B, Hillary Clinton. How many electoral college votes does a candidate need to become president? A, 232, B, 270, 306, or D, 538? Well, we went through this before. The answer is 270, B. And just going back to this chart again, the reason why Donald Trump won, despite the fact he had fewer votes, is very likely because of this strange system where the electoral college is the one that actually votes for the president. And what may have happened is that when Hillary Clinton won her states, she won her states with big majorities. when Donald Trump won his states, he could have won many of these states with quite small majorities. So if he won a state with a small majority, whether it's irrelevant for the electoral college members, they will look at at who the majority of their electorate voted for. And if the majority was Donald Trump, even if that majority was very small, every single member of the electoral college in that state will vote for Donald Trump, because that's the system of how it works. Now let's get through some more of these. Which of the following statements is false? A, the United States is both a republic and a democracy. Well, right in the first video, we did forms of government, and the US is both a republic and a democracy. The outcome of the electoral college system is always in agreement with the outcome of the popular vote. Well, we've just been through that. That's the strange system in America, where the electoral college system means that occasionally, and 2016 was an example of that, it's not in agreement with the outcome of the popular vote. C, each state has 2 senators. That's true. And D, the number of senators that each state has is based primarily on the state's population. The number of electors that each state has is based primarily on the state's population. Well, that is true because a large state gets more electors than a small state. So A is true, B is false, C is true, and D is true. So the one that is false is B. Now, we got another question. When we went through the Bill of Rights, which was those first 10 amendments, I said these are really worth getting familiar with. And here we've got a question on the First Amendment. You've actually got it written there. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. That's the First Amendment. A very old-fashioned language. But what it's telling you is that there is freedom of religion. There is freedom of speech. There is a free press, and people are allowed to demonstrate and to petition the government. That's the First Amendment. What is the main purpose of the First Amendment? And you've got 4 things here. A, to protect the federal government from the people by placing limits on their individual rights. Well, that's not true. And we know that the Bill of Rights was actually there to protect the people and actually to limit the federal government's powers. And in this case, the First Amendment is keeping this safe for the people, that they can practice their religion, they can have free speech, there is a free press, and that they can demonstrate, they can petition the government if they want to. B, to prevent Congress from making laws. Well, there's nothing here about it. C, to protect essential freedoms, including the freedom of religion and the freedom to petition the government. Well, that looks pretty much exactly what it's about. But let's check D. D, to protect the right to bear arms against Congress. Well, it doesn't make any mention of that. So the answer to this one is C. Let's go through this statement again. The Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. So it's exactly the same thing again, the First Amendment, where we've got another question. Which of the following laws would not be permitted by the First Amendment? A law protecting a news website that is printing stories that the government does not approve of. Well, it's certainly A would be permitted. B, a law guaranteeing the right to complain about the president. Well, that would certainly be permitted because that's all about free speech. B is all about free speech. A is all about having a free press. C, a law that establishes a state-run church. Well, C, a state-run church is not is not all about. It says the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This is a law establishing a religion, so C would not be permitted. But let's just check D. A law making it illegal to ban a protest march against an unpopular decision made by the Supreme Court. That would certainly be allowed. So the answer is the one that would not be permitted by the First Amendment is C, a law that establishes a state-run church. And again, I won't read the statement a third time, but we look at that statement and we say, the question says, which choice correctly completes the following sentence? The First Amendment guarantees something, comma, something, comma, something, comma, and a final thing. 4 things. A, freedom of voting, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of petition. There's nothing about voting in the First Amendment, so it's not A. And it's not B, because that talks about freedom of voting as well. C, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of petition looks exactly what the First Amendment is all about. But let's just check D before we say it's C. D, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of taxation. The First Amendment is not about taxation, so it's not D. So the answer is C. More questions. Which amendments to the Constitution stated that the powers not delegated to the federal government or prohibited to the states were reserved to the states? And the answer there is the 10th Amendment. We covered it, but you're seeing an example here, which is where you actually don't get given a passage or a speech or a picture to interpret. It's actually asking you a question. Do you know the answer or don't you know the answer? And the answer is it's the 10th Amendment. The final of those first 10 amendments that forms the Bill of Rights is this one. So it's A. Next question. What trend in the media has not been a major factor in the US presidential elections since 1960? Some of you might look at this and say, but we didn't have this. This isn't covered. You never talked about this. This is a question where it's looking at your ability to look at those 4 answers and think about the world since 1960 and work out which one doesn't make sense with what's happened in the world. So let's go through them. A, the convenience of online news has challenged the dominance of major newspapers as the primary source of information about candidates and elections. Well, online news really has changed a lot. People aren't reading newspapers in the same way. So A makes sense. Let's look at B. The growth of fake news websites has blurred the lines between fictional and factual information about candidates and elections. Well, I think we've all seen how fake news, how the internet, there are good things about the internet, but one of the bad things about the internet is fake news. So B makes sense. The televised presidential debates continue to command large audiences. Well, we're not Americans. We don't know this in detail. It sounds like it could be true. I'm not 100% certain, but I suspect that C is true. So I'm rather hoping that D is going to be wrong. But let's check, because we're looking for a trend that has not been a major factor. What does D say? D says people now rely more on mainstream news than ever for reliable information about candidates and elections. Well, actually, it's going the other way. So with all these websites coming up. So I think that D has not been a major is not been a major factor in the US presidential elections since 1960. So answer D. Another one, different subject, about Congress. And we've got a passage here to read and interpret. Every bill that is intended to become part of the law in the United States must be presented to the President for approval. So a bill is the same as a law. So if the Congress have a new law, have a bill, and they want it to be approved, they have to show it to the President, and he has to approve it. When the President receives the bill, he can sign it into law or return the unsigned bill to Congress with his objections to the bill. The latter case is known as a presidential veto. So if Congress has an idea, they want this to become law, if the president doesn't like it, he can refuse to sign it and give it back and say, no, that we call that a veto. Congress can overturn a presidential veto with a 2/3 vote of both houses, whereupon the bill becomes law. So if Congress, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives together, have an idea for a new law, they give it to the president, and the president says, I don't like that idea, and he gives it back to them. If both the House of Representatives and the Senate, by a 2/3 majority, say they want this bill to become law, then the president's veto power is removed, and it does become law. Alternatively, if the president doesn't want the bill to become law, but doesn't want it to be seen as vetoing the law directly, he can use a pocket veto. Whenever Congress is not in session, the president can simply decide not to sign the bill and say that he was unable to return the bill to Congress within 10 days because Congress was on vacation. At that point, the bill is automatically rejected without the president having to do anything. So the president decides not to sign a bill, and he makes that decision when Congress is on holiday. And because they're on holiday for some time, after 10 days, the time passes. The bill is automatically rejected without the president having to do anything. So let's go through these questions. The first one is, what can Congress do to pass a bill that has been vetoed by the president? A, if the president vetoes a bill preventing it from becoming law, there is nothing that Congress can do at that point. Well, I don't think that's what the statement says. It tells you how it can. B, Congress can overturn a presidential veto with a 2/3 majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. I think that's exactly what it said, but let's check C and D. Congress can ask the Supreme Court to force the bill to become a law. Well, it doesn't say that there, and that's not true either. Or D, nobody knows because no president has ever used the power of the veto. Well, that's not true, and that's certainly not in the statement. So the answer is B. Congress can overturn a presidential veto with a 2/3 majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Congress is two houses. It's the House of Representatives and the Senate. Next question. What happens if the president tries to return an unsigned bill to Congress while its members are on a month-long vacation? A, the bill automatically becomes law after 10 days. Well, that is not what it said. B, the bill is automatically rejected after 10 days. Well, I think that's exactly what he was saying. It's a game the president can play. C, the Congress can still pass the bill into law with a 2/3 majority vote in both houses when they return from vacation. That's not what it says. Or C, the president has to try again when Congress returns from vacation. That's not what it says. The answer is B. More questions. The US Constitution. The US Constitution has little to say about reasons for impeachment. Impeachment, if you remember, is firing the president and removal from office. Treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Misdemeanor is another word for crime. Including bribery, intimidation, refusal to obey a lawful order, dereliction of duty, that means not doing your duty, perjury, abuse of authority, failure to supervise, conduct unbecoming, and misuse of assets. Which of the following would be grounds for presidential impeachment? We've got 4 things here. Vetoing legislation that Congress wishes to pass. Well, I don't think it's going to be A, because we've just been through how the president is allowed to veto legislation. It's one of the important things about these checks and balances, that you've got the legislature, which is Congress. You've got the executive, which is the president and his team, and you've got the Supreme Court. The president is allowed to veto legislation. B, proposing universal healthcare coverage for the millions of uninsured Americans. Well, I think that would be pretty awful to say you want to fire someone for proposing universal healthcare coverage. C, committing perjury, which is lying under oath. That's often in a court where before you're asked questions in a course of law, you are asked to say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But if you lie under oath, that's perjury. And actually it says in the statement, perjury is a reason for impeachment. So I think you'll find the answer C, but let's look at D. D, signing a law that prevents Wall Street banks from cheating their customers. Well, I don't think it's going to be D. So the answer is C. That looks a difficult answer, but actually it's quite an easy answer, because we know it's not A, because we've just been through the fact that the president can veto Congress. B and D look ridiculous, so it really has to be C. And it says C. If you look on line 4 of it, it actually perjury is included as a reason for impeachment. Sorry, I've got lots of questions, but I think it's important that we do lots of questions in this area so that you get a flavour for what you might get. Based on the information in the passage, which of the following is a true statement? This actually goes back to this is a question which goes right back to this very first thing. The electoral college system consists of 538 electors. A majority, or 270 electoral votes, is required to elect the president. Each state is allotted 1 elector for each of its members in the House of Representatives, which is based on the state's population, plus 2 additional electors to account for the state's 2 senators. The following figure shows the results. Senators are elected for 6-year terms, and members of the House are elected for 2-year terms. So let's go back. I'm sorry about this. Let's go back and go through this question. The number of members that a state has in the US Senate is based on the state's population, whereas each state has 2 members in the US House of Representatives. Well, that's not true, because the US Senate has 2 members, and the US representative is represented on the, because they've got the 2 houses the wrong way round. So US Senate should read US House of Representatives on line 1, and at the end of the sentence, US House of Representatives should read US Senate for that to be correct. B, the number of members that a state has in the House of Representatives is based on the state's population. True. Whereas each state always has 2 members in the Senate. B looks true. Let's check C and D. The number of members that a state has in both the House of Representatives and the US Senate is based on the state's population. That's not true. The US Senate, every state, whether it is a tiny state or a large state, has 2 senators. D, each state has 2 members in both the US Senate and the US House of Representatives. That is not true. So the answer is B. Next question. When a senator is elected, how long is his or her term in office? Well, the answer is 6 years. And it says it. And you should also know that Senate's votes are every 6 years, House of Representatives are every 2 years. The answer is 6 years. So I've given you lots of more questions, and the reason why I've done that is I just thought this would be a way to, well, first of all, help your understanding of things that may not have been clear when I first did the talks. But also, I think question practice is a very good way of cementing some of this in your mind.